I will talk about the famous site, Dmanisi, about the fauna, not about the Homos from Dmanisi, but about the fauna and mainly about the ruminants, the herbivores. This is my specialty, actually, in paleontology. So, Dmanisi fauna is incredibly rich fauna. But actually, this is not a surprising thing because Dmanisi is located in the Caucasus, and Caucasus is one of the regions on the earth which has the highest biodiversity. The reasons of the biodiversity of the Caucasus is like there's a juxtaposition of several factors. One is the special geographic position, which is the Caucasus is a natural crossroad. Well, it's like an isthmus between two large landlocked seas, which really had their geological history during Quaternary is really amazing of these sea basins. Anyway, this isthmus that is connecting Asia with Europe, Southwest Asia with Eastern European plain. This is the geographic position, and one of the major key factors of the biodiversity is that Caucasus is the mountainous region, and mountains usually actually have a very special role, like a complex role in the on the influence of the composition of flora and fauna everywhere. It's like that, and these roles are that mountains act as the major migration species dispersal corridors, and in the same time they are the barriers and refugiums for the fauna. So all this stuff is juxtaposed in the Caucasus, and that's why Caucasian biome is so diverse, has such highest biodiversity, and I guess all these factors are applicable to Dmanisi site as well. But actually, what we have in Dmanisi, we are in the mountainous terrain, but these are not just regular mountains that we have today, covered with the forest. These times when the Dmanisi fauna was formed actually coincides with a very active volcanism phase that very active, long, uninterruptedly continuing during 2 million years. Dmanisi was formed at the end of this, at the periphery of this big volcanic plateau created there. And I guess this, and I believe this is what I think, that the volcanism is one of the major factors that influence the major key factors, that decisive factors that are that explain the absolutely unlimited resources of the environment existing during prehistoric times in the Dmanisi area, very rich, nutritious vegetation growing on these plateaus, and the mosaic of landscape and diversity of habitats. I think many of these things are linked to the volcanism. But with volcanism, actually, we are also very lucky in Dmanisi, because actually, when you look at the succession, sedimentary succession of the Dmanisi site, all these layers, these are the series of volcanic ashes that turned into soils. So, these different soil successions, they formed from the volcanic ash deposits, and actually, this is one of the reasons why we have so many absolute dates of all possible layers of ashes and basalts, and we have nice and this in combination with the paleomagnetics. Really, Dmanisi site is very, very well dated site. The collection of from the collection of Dmanisi is really huge. It has been uninterruptedly excavated during decades. This year it was the 39th year of excavations. So all my ideas and my thoughts that I will talk share with you now is saturated by the thoughts and ideas of many scientists working there at this site, and I'm very thankful to the team of excavators and preparators working at the site all this time. And on this photo, well, you see Abeslon Vekwa, one of the founders and leading paleontologist of this site. Actually, he is not with us now, but many things that our image of Dmanisi really very much is built on Abeslon's ideas. He was the one who described this fauna first, and you see the photos of the first excavations. This is how it was starting, and one of the first specimens, very beautiful specimens. For example, this Canis portugalis specimen that is here. We still don't have such nice skull of Canis, although we have series of skulls accumulated during these 40 years. So after these 40 years, we can summarize it. Actually, the Dmanisi fauna list comprises now officially, this is how it's published, 53 species of vertebrates, among them large mammals, really predominate, more than 30, I guess, 32 species belong to large mammals in this list. And it's a huge diversity, which will agree with me. But with this new sorting, I was sorting very intensively during 2021. The artiodactyls really, that's the biggest part of the collection. It's more than half of the collection. So I sorted thousands of specimens, and actually I really cannot close my eyes. I really see there are 6 additional bodies, which was a big surprise for me, and I still need to get accustomed to this idea. So it's like a spoiler, this talk now, but well, it will help me really to share my ideas and to test it with the auditorium. And you also will be accustomed to it. This will not be a big surprise when you hear about this and the publications. From the biostratigraphic point of view, Dmanisi is a typical Late Villafranchian fauna, typical Eurasian fauna, except of Homo and possibly Megantherium. There is no other form. Everything is typical Eurasian. As I said, the artiodactyls are the 60% of the assemblage, of the fossil assemblage. But what distinguishes the Dmanisi collection is the big share, a large proportional share of carnivore remains. Carnivores are really very numerous in Dmanisi. We have 13 species of carnivores. I guess all the carnivores that were living in Palaearctics during late Villafranchian are there. Nobody is missing. And this richness of carnivore guild really is like a hint to see the diversity and such a very prolific, rich environment with unlimited resources that could accommodate this amount of diversity, animals, prehistoric animals that we have in Dmanisi. And I guess for me, this ratio, this simple ratio, carnivore-prey ratio, is very instrumental to imagine this image of the Dmanisi area. So these carnivores that we have in Dmanisi are very heavy ones, about 200 kilos. The Homo is the largest one, and it goes down to smaller mustelids. And so we have all this range. And and if you really apply these body masses to this ratio, something unimaginably rich and prolific world will arise in front of us. That actually the diversity of herbivores really confirms this expectation. So these are that's a collage of some beautiful specimens of carnivores, but there are some more beautiful specimens still in the drawers, in the cabinet drawers. And this is the herbivores from Dmanisi, 17 species. And here I didn't include these additional 6 ones that I will introduce briefly to you today. This is very diverse group, and what is really striking on this diagram that there is a huge diversity of this body mass class from 100 to 500 kilograms. A lot of large herbivores, and these herbivores, when you look at their ecology more closely, actually the cervids, what we have there, these are all forest edge ecotone animals. So this transitional vegetational belt, this is where they were dwelling. The Alcini, what we have for the new cervid in Dmanisi, that's a really specialist of the early successions. This is the ecological niche of Alces, doesn't matter for the temperature gradients, nothing matters, just early successions, this is what it needs. So the spiral horn antelopes, these are grazers, but these are very special grazers of very nutritious, rich, protein-rich, soft grasses. And we have big cohort of mountain bovids, ovibovines and goats and gorals. And the number of this group actually is doubled after this sorting exercise that I have in 2001. This is a collage of some beautiful specimens of artiodactyls, and these are the remaining herbivores. These lagomorphs and rhinos and horses, and this really monumental lake of Mammuthus meridionalis. There are generations of carnivores, probably Pachycrocuta puppies, were chewing this leg. It's very heavily chewed. It's a very beautiful specimen. Now on the exposition it is exposed. So, but well, as I said, I will talk mainly about ruminants, and I should concentrate more on bovids. But I will briefly show you the cervids. For a long time, the composition of cervids was not stable in Dmanisi, let's say. We were in the list. You will find Eugladoceros and 3 types of like medium-sized deer, like Pseudodamnesti, Cerus abessalomi, and Cerus perierim. All this, but after this work, we can be sure there is no doubt that there are just these 4 cervids deers present in Dmanisi. We have 2 megacerines, Avernoceros insolitus and Primagaceros obscurus, and it's clearly this is what we have. We have a huge collection, huge population actually of Pseudodamnesti. Actually, the Dmanisi seems to be a Pseudodamnesti dwelling area. This is the area of mating areas, a very special place for Pseudodamnesti. And we have a very rare element of early places in faunas, one of the earliest elks, primitive elk in Dmanisi. So it was actually, I enjoyed very much every time I was deciding that this bone belongs to Alcini. Was making me happy at the end. So I arrived to this amount of collection. So it's in the scale of the Dmanisi, where we have thousands, like Pseudodamnesti, for example, count 1,300 specimens. So this 50 specimen doesn't look like much, but in fact, this is a really impressive and the largest collection of the early primitive elks in Eurasia, except of Senes. The other remains, if we count, there will not be more than 10 pieces of elks, actually. So, Dmanisi elk, it's one of the major questions in the evolutionary history of Eurasian elks is whether it represents one single phyletic line or there are different lineages. So there is no clear evidence, no solid evidence of the presence of different lineages also, although this is quite an expectable scenario. And now there is a tendency to talk about this gradual evolution from Pteralces gallicus, size increase, the antler beams diminishing, and this kind of gradual transformation. But actually, what the Dmanisi fossil elk tells us that it cannot be equated. It doesn't clearly this antler, this palmation fragment cannot belong to the antlers characteristic to Pteralces gallicus. And if we follow the bubonic scheme, it is something that we have in Dmanisi. This is a very loose monopodial branching type. It has such very free twisting of tines, unpredictable development of these tines that we see here. It's not characteristic to, not at all characteristic to Pteralces gallicus, and we have here it has a very big incision, probably this size. So this in a way reminds me the very bizarre antlers of Cervatus scotti from the States, from America. And well, this is just, it cannot be proven, but it's just an idea and the way I see this elk there. And what is interesting with this feature of the presence of this incision, yes, here, yeah, Dmanisi resembles to Livensovka other fragments very much. And this might be a hint to the idea that the Caucasus region was inhabited by a different Alcine species than we have in Western Europe. Yes, and it's quite a possible ecological scenario, actually. Yes, and I think with these remains what we have, we can characterize very well the primitive elk from Dmanisi. That's another deer. This is the primitive elephant, Pseudodamnesti or Cervus nesti. I would prefer to call it Cervus nesti. I agree totally with the Goiter's idea that this is what it is, Pseudodamnesti. And what we did, Dmanisi is really just incredibly rich. This collection is huge. It's just 61 individuals I counted. It was a very basic, simple count, actually, just based on metacarpos, dextra, sinistra. This is what I evaluated with. I didn't take into account the age, individual age, and so on. So probably number is really larger than this. And here, what I brought, this is Pseudodamnesti is a well-known, four-time deer. But here, what we have in Dmanisi, this is like, you see this crown tine here is bifurcated, it's like it has 5 tines. So it's some alpha male, probably fully grown. This antler was published as Cervus berrieri by a person. So, and this one is the type of Cervus absalome. But all these are one big collection of Pseudodamnesti. This is one of these megatherian species. It's a Premegathyrosopscus. There is no way, there's no doubt that this is that deer. What we have these 2 absolutely beautiful antlers, but they're fragmentary. They are fragmented in a similar way. So, and on this second one, which is more new one, we have this strong subasal tine. visible. We see that the position of dorsal tongue is quite variable. It's one population, but has this kind of variability. And Dmanisi Premegataurus is really one of the earliest Premegataurus in Western Palaearctic, together with the Romanian Rodbov sylvestrum. This Premegataurus from that side, which was described as an alot and Elaphus aramboki, by Samson and Radulescu. I think there is no doubt that these are the similar animals. And this is remarkable, actually, in the context of the role of migration corridor, dispersal corridor of the mountain chains, and this everything. It's in the same Alpine Himalayan mountain belt. So this is where this large deer is dispersing. This is the dispersal route. Another large deer that we have in Dmanisi, that's Artiodactyls insolutus. I brought here just this absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, monumental antler of a fully grown, big Artiodactyls in Dmanisi. Artiodactyls was inhabiting, and that's not a newcomer to Dmanisi. This deer is present in the Caucasian region, starting from the late Pliocene, early places in sites, for example, in Quebec, we have Artiodactyls, but there is a clear tendency to grow in size, and in postgranular dentition, everything is growing, not just antlers. So Artiodactyls is really related with Chinese megatherium deer, and you clearly see this bizarre direction of antlers of Artiodactyls resembles this. It's very special. Regarding it's very important to stress that we don't have Equadoctylus in Dmanisi, clearly. We don't have. And I have checked all the preceding faunas in the Caucasus, everything we have in the Georgian National Museum. I sorted out all these faunas, and they are also, I don't see any Equadoctylus, so it might be an important information for the migration routes of these large deer. So probably Equadoctylus disperses maybe from the north of the, through the Eastern European plain. This is where the dispersal of Equadoctylus happens. That's why maybe we don't have it here in Dmanisi. Well, we have this exotic artiodactyl ruminant also. That's the latest geophyte in Palaearctic. So, Palaeotragus, I think it's Priazovicus. It belongs to the species Priazovicus, not to Inexpectatus. There's a tendency to unite all these last Palaeotragus populations into one species, into Palaeotragus inexpectatus or Midillantherium inexpectatus, call it as you wish. And there are some morphological grounds for that. There is an idea that the reduction of molar series and the honco, the ossicon cross-section shape and length and direction and so on. And it's very remarkable, again, in the context of the biodiversity of the isolated position of the special Caucasian region, that in the Caucasus, like in the north, in Levensoka, the antlers from Levensoka have the same kind of characteristic, same kind of triangular cross-section of ossicons, and Dmanisi has the similar character. And I think this speaks about that we have a separate population here, isolated population. The taxonomic rank could be subspecies or species, it doesn't matter, but it's a different population. And That's important. Plus, I think that the premolar series of the Dmanisi giraffe is not reduced. It has quite long premolars, although we do not have the complete tooth row, but I just extrapolated with when you look at we have giraffe in Quebec as well, and there we have a tooth row, complete tooth row, and I could calculate this index, and the Dmanisi premolars have the dentition usually. Actually, it's quite comparable lengths, okay, comparable size. So I think we have the same species all the time, maybe from Quebec until the extinction. And this is a very special specimen, actually, of that I love very much in Dmanisi collection. This is a mandible of Palaeotragus with cut marks made by these prehistoric humans on a giraffe mandible in the Caucasus. All these combinations sounds today so bizarre. And well, I've reached the bovids, the major group, with a lot of surprises. Well, when I had this PhD in my thesis, when I announced the presence of 7 bovids in Dmanisi, this was already a big number, actually. Big number. But now, actually, this number is almost doubled after this sorting exercise with Dmanisi collection, as I said. So here on this photo, you see this famous Dmanisi boss. I like this name very much. This is very charismatic, powerful name, Dmanisi boss. But unfortunately, taxonomic rules and this work with these works with the according to taxonomic rule, this name is deleted now. So it's an early primitive bison Elpison georgicus. I put it next to the Niho one, Bison Bukhsianidze here. It's quite remarkable that we have very similar. They have similar preservation, similar fragments. This is what we see, and both are primitive. Both are bisons according to Plero, but in fact they cannot be. Yeah, there is some differences still visible. For example, this occipital of Dmanisi is more clearly more trapezoidal shape, while here we have it's almost an arc. Yes, so it means that here this one mastoids are on the Bison Bukhsianidze mastoids are already swollen. This is a more advanced stage in the bison evolution. So this one is more primitive. There's a difference also with some metrical differences in this, like postcornal length of the skull. The Dmanisi has longer, and so on. But well, this is just to tell that we really have one of the most primitive bisons in Dmanisi. But what is more interesting, what puzzles me most, is the diversity of postcranial remains of bovines in Dmanisi, where I clearly see 3 different types of bovines. And when if we turn to the other sites in the region, they are clearly in this site. It's a very nice, beautiful site, Kushkuna in Azerbaijan, just preceding Dmanisi. There are 2 bovines mentioned. I had a chance actually to study the Agideribos skull in Moscow, and I can assure you that this is not a bison. So in the region, directly during the Dmanisi times, we already have a diversity. We already have like 2 bovines at minimum living there. So probably this difference in metabolism reflects this diversity. And well, this is such a very simple chart that I built. And here, well, the proportions, really, with these proportions. Simply, this is a very useful graphic, actually, to separate bovine metapods. So we have this clearly these two clusters, and one is separately. I have just one metacarpal. So, this is this very long one, very gracile one. It's not the fusion, if you see, it's not yet over. So probably it may grow a bit longer, even, but not much. And this is here, this group. It's a small, very small bovine in comparison with Dmanisi pods. Small and morphologically it has some differences. So it reminds me some buboline. This is what I think, anyway. And the idea also is confirmed by the presence of this tip of a horn core of a bovine with a keel here. Yeah, it's a soft keel, but it's a keel. And so this somehow helps me to think that probably we are having a bubble in Dmanisi, and this is the biggest population of metacarpals here really belong to Dmanisi boss, to primitive bison. So I think I will name 3 bovine species in Dmanisi. This will be the new thing. And well, the skulls will appear, I'm sure. Skulls will appear as it was the case with the spiral horned antelopes, because when I defended my thesis, then I named 2 spiral horned antelopes without having any horn core that had a spiral, and one of them was just named without the large one, without having a skull, cranial remain at all. So, but later years, well, it was a very big satisfaction, a big happiness actually to see the skull of this larger spiral horned antelope from Dmanisi, described by Absalom as Pontoceros surplime. It's a generic with relatively smaller antelope with similar homonymous spiraled horns from the later part of the early Pleistocene or middle Pleistocene. And this one is really twice as large. It's really giant in comparison with the Pontoceros ambiguus. So it is very, very special antelope. And for the other one, actually, just recently, horn core with spiral kill was found. And what is important with this smaller antelope, although the remains of this antelope are really very few, and the huge Dmanisi collection, maybe 10 specimens. I don't think there are more, but although this is rare, a similar kind of horn core we have in Kwabebe as well. So this one is not a newcomer. It is present there since the beginning of Quaternary in the Caucasus region and probably elsewhere as well. Well, I was very much puzzled with these antelopes, who they are. They have really very much distinguished enamel, which is wrinkled, has a very wrinkled, characteristically wrinkled, thick enamel, and they have very much reduced premolar series. They have very tall vast molars. All these features really speak about a very special type of grazer, a grazer that is eating protein-rich, soft foliage, soft grass. This is what it does. And later, really, we found this mandible from Dmanisi, which shows a very open mandibular angle here. This complex of this morphological characters is characteristic to Alzolafins in Africa, and it tells that we are really dealing with this, especially with Pontoceros surplime. We are having an antelope that is a grazer, which has a very elongated face, like in Antelopes. And really, I included this maxillary fragment of Pontoceros here for you. Here it's clearly visible that face is really very elongated of this animal. Antelope here, actually, we see the suture between zygomatic and maxilla. So, and the orbits are behind, somewhere here or here, I cannot say. And you see the distance from the hypothetical position of the orbit in relation to a last molar here. This is really a huge degree of the face elongation. So this is the addition to the portrait of this very special antelope, Pontoceros sulpine, so far known just from Dmanisi. But I'm sure that after this material is published, there will be more finds. There should be more finds. Caprine subfamily, really, I was awaiting, it was preparing biggest surprise for me. Well, previously, just 4 species of caprines were described from Dmanisi. This was Preovibos, Zogelia, Gallocoral, Meneginisi, Zickenperfi, larger size Gallocoral than Heavensenes, and Capradali, a primitive Western Caucasian ibex type capra. But with new sorting, I really cannot avoid the evidence of the presence of these 4 additional caprines. So we have this another capra, which looks like Agagus. We have probably a small size caprine, the size of Rupi capra. And we have just dental remains, and actually really not much can be said about it. But this was a big surprise that the gorals is represented by a second species in Dmanisi. It's not yet described, but I will show you the remains. And there's also another caprine that looks like a it's a big headache for me. I have not decided who is this. It has features of, it looks like ovibovines, or it would be a primitive ovis as well. So this is the mountain goat. We have this Rupi caprini group, and we have this ovibovini, or this one can be an ovini, some primitive ovis. These are the major news in Dmanisi fauna. So Caucasus, as you know, is a mountainous place, and there is a very high diversity of wild goats. 3 species of wild goats live in this small area, small mountain, in comparison with this entire alpine Himalayan mountain belt. In this small area, 3 species are living, and I guess this is an important information from Dmanisi that we can derive. It changes the paradigm of the caprine research, wild goat research, our vision of their evolutionary history based on paleontological fossil finds. The point is that the skull, the honker of the already described Capradali is clearly type resembles to the Western Caucasian, the Capra caucasica type, this apex type of Capra caucasica. Another skull that we found just recently, to my amazement, has the horn cores have morphologically are very similar to Capra agagus, although the skull itself has a lot of primitive features. This is not a Capra agagus. But what is important from this, the message of this slide is that we might be at the beginning well, these forms could be the ancestral of the capra wild goat species that are living now in the Caucasus. Yes, yeah, it could be ancestral. So we might be dealing with this. And this is this new skull. It's actually not very well preserved. It's very difficult to be very bad calculate layer is covering it. So, but anyway, the general morphology is visible, and what I can say, well, oncores are very similar to what we have in Capricorns with anteromedial keel here. Oncores are diverging by 50 degrees, and while diverging, it's twisting heteronymously, slowly. So the honcore itself is twisting slowly, heteronymously. It really differs. It's more primitive than the extant Capricorns, of course, by these kind of features that honcores are much closer to orbits, and the frontal area, the honcore bases are not pneumatized. The skull itself is wide and larger. So these are probably mesomorphic features. Anyway, these are the dental dentition tooth rolls of goat-sized mandibles from Dmanisi. And here actually, these are quite rare specimens. So we have just these three more or less complete tooth roll mandibles of this group, although we have the skull remains. But well, we were lucky actually to have them. Well, these two mandibles previously I ascribed to Capradali, both of these mandibles. But now with this diversity, I just looked at it again, and actually it reveals some morphological diversity, which probably talks about taxonomic diversity, and we have an evidence based on cranial remains in Dmanisi. This is this development of metaconid and the profile picture, the profile of the occlusal relief labially. So these two mandibles actually might belong to two different species, to different taxa, but whether it belongs to Capra or to something else, this is a question, because they such strongly developed metaconid are characteristic to Ovis group. Ovine group. This is Ammotragus has this, and Ovis usually have well-developed metaconid. Even this degree of development of metaconid on P3, many zooarchaeologists can buy it as an Ovis mandible. And this one actually, we see the mosaic of morphological traits here, and we should not forget that this is 2 million years old. One of the first very old fossils, and this morphology is not really stabilized yet. We have this mosaic of different. So it's a really big challenge, and I guess almost impossible to decide to which species does it belong unless we find a skull with dentition, with everything together, articulated. Then we can say but I guess it will be difficult to decide who it is. And it is especially difficult. I will show you another, the following slide with the
Maia, excuse me, Maia. We know that Dmanisi is the richest site in the world.
Okay, but I will go quickly, very quickly.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So, and okay, this one is the smallest one. That's why I think it is comparable to Rupicapra size. But this is the only remain we have, and some upper teeth. And so I cannot really say that we have Rupicapra in Dmanisi, but some smaller caprini, definitely the extra species is present. And this is this big headache for me, this honker with homonymous torsion. It has no sinuses inside, so it's a very primitive one. It has features of ovibovines, and it could be also primitive ovis. So this is a well, I think it will be difficult to say who is this. In fact, it doesn't have a real analog in the fossils. And that's the ovibovines. We have now the skulls of clearly pre-ovibos, and we have a skull of a smaller ovibovine, as Zoogelia, which is really, honkers are similar to Bentamicena, Zoogelia minho. And this is the last surprise from Dmanisi. These are the two corals from the site. Yes, one is the larger. This new one is larger. And in the beginning, I was thinking that these differences could be just a sexual dimorphism, nothing else. But actually, we have several skulls, so about 10 skull remains of this group in the collection. And there's this constant difference in the volume of brain, brain case, it's constantly, these forms have 2 centimeters wider brain at the parietal, we've measured inside. The other one has smaller, and I think this is an important difference to state that we have 2 corals, and it's not a really big surprise because Dmanisi and the diversification, the radiation of corals is starting from the end of Pliocene, early Pleistocene. This is when it happens, when they enter into the Palaearctic realm. And so this is it, what I wanted to say. I really wanted to share with you my surprises about the diversity of Dmanisi, and I guess Dmanisi fauna has impressed you once again. And well, I will not read these sentences. I think the reason of this diversity is really because we are Dmanisi is just one segment of this huge migration corridor, species special corridor that exists extends throughout Eurasia and at the southern border of the Palearctic realm. This is where we are, and this geographic position makes Dmanisi so special. So thank you very much. I guess I really spoke a lot, but I really couldn't be shorter. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I would be very glad to hear and answer.